Welcome to PoliticIt Talk, where we talk about political strategy. I'm Josh Light.
And I'm Sterling Morris.
And today we're going to be talking about targeting for messaging. Well, if you look at targeting for messaging, traditionally targeting methods that people have used in campaigns include surveys, focus groups, and all this data that people collect from these surveys and focus groups. They've been able to build models that help them project what kind of message they actually want to send towards specific types of voters.
And messaging is really a way to segment these lists into specific groups that are passionate about specific messages and specific topics.
One way that people have also done this traditionally is they've used rented lists. For instance, you can go to a third-party company and you can find a list of individuals who have given money towards Second Amendment causes or some obscure cause for an endangered species, for instance. And you can use these lists to find people that you want to go out and target.
That's right, Josh. And usually these lists can be rented, and the price for the list is usually between the range of 6 to 10 cents per name on the list, and you can typically use it once, and at which time you're supposed to return it.
And there's been, like, if you look past all these old traditional methods, there's been a lot of really interesting new methods that have come out in the 2012 election. We're going to talk about some of those things that have happened, like the Obama campaign, for instance. They actually built web crawlers, which are software programs that go out on the internet, and these software programs they would scour all the local online newspapers for excerpts of Obama's speech, and then they would pull data from these speeches from these online newspapers, and all the comments individuals would make and how they felt about the speech in specific geographical areas. And the speechwriters were then able to make adjustments to Obama's speeches based on feedback that they were able to get from the internet, which really helped the Obama campaign have very targeted messaging across the entire nation.
And speaking about Obama, he also did a lot of great things with online fundraising. And we're going to take a bit of a tangent before we really get into the meat and potatoes of this podcast and look at some of the interesting things that he did to have a successful campaign. And a lot of it was all backed by research and big data that they used to analyze how well they performed.
So let's go ahead and talk about some of these things that worked really well for the Obama administration. Well, they found that the word "hey," when it's used as the subject line of an email, got the most opens in the campaign. It was interesting because they would go out and they would test all these subject lines in their emails, and they would get feedback by seeing how many people would open that, probably through something like Bitly or maybe something they programmed themselves. And they actually found that word "hey," H-E-Y, got the most opens. They also found that their most successful fundraising email focused on how Romney was going to outspend him. That email alone raised $2.6 million for Obama. The second best email that they used had a subject line of some scary numbers, and that raised about $1.9 million. So it was interesting because the campaign, the best strategy for them to use was to make their supporters feel like they were going to lose.
One of the things that I thought was interesting about the Hey email is I subscribe to both Mitt Romney and Barack Obama's email feeds to get a feel for the voice that they had and the type of messaging that they used. And that's an interesting case study for anyone out there listening who wants to refine their email messaging. Barack Obama's messages were really good at being conversant. They seemed like they really had to feel like Barack Obama was actually sitting down on his computer in the Oval Office sending out an email message right to you. It sounded just like the president was writing, and they were conversant. The other thing that they did really well is they, based on some of the research they did, they found that using ugly yellow highlighting really helped some emails have a higher read-through rate, which was interesting. Of course, they said over time, ugly yellow highlighting and those type of techniques weren't quite as effective, so they had to continuously reevaluate their email performance. A big thing for them in this most recent campaign was mobile application fundraising. They made over $115 million on their fundraising platforms.
Yeah, on that mobile app fundraising a platform, like Sterling just said, they made 115 million. But something also interesting is donors who use the mobile app, they would donate 4 times more often, and they gave 3 times the amount of money. And in fact, not only would donations, having an application, a mobile application, if you're in politics, is great for generating traffic to your website. In fact, Obama saw 23% of his traffic coming from mobile applications. But one thing you got to consider when you're looking at these statistics is Obama is a Democrat, and Democrats typically have younger voters that are supporting them. So if you're a Republican, you probably wouldn't get quite that kind of volume from a mobile app, but I would still say that it's going to be worth it in most races to invest in something like that.
He also did great. He had great techniques like upselling donors. Right after a donor would use a mobile app, there'd be a screen thanking the donor for making a donation, and immediately giving him or her an opportunity to make another quick $5 donation. So they used upselling techniques. It's something that's used in sales strategy, and that was nicely integrated into their mobile interface. The other thing that I found interesting was there was a big attempt to reduce the number of steps a user would need to make a donation. They noticed by making the donations more streamlined and reducing steps, the level of donations that they received increased. One final thing I wanted to talk about was the speed of their interface. They worked on speeding up the web pages. They noticed about a 14% increase in donations just from optimizing the speed.
And you know what, the points that Sterling just made regarding mobile apps, those same concepts can be applied to your website as well. You should have an upsell, you should have the ability to share, and you should always be looking to increase the speed. Those are all things that you can also use. And you want to make things as easy as possible for people because you'll get a lot more people participating if you make it easier. So you can take that concept and apply it to everything in your campaign. One other thing that was really interesting as far as ads went with the Obama campaign, they found that Michelle Obama performed the best for online ads. So a picture with her in the ad worked a lot better than Obama, which is quite interesting. Also, another thing is the mobile video ads for the Obama campaign. They saw a 3% to 19.5% click-through rate, which is really great. And one thing that was also interesting is that the Obama administration faced a big problem because when they went out and they tried to contact individuals between the ages of 18 to 29, they found they couldn't contact 50% of those individuals. But then they went out and they looked in social networks, and they found they actually created a Facebook application for the Obama campaign, and they found that 85% of their target market between the ages of 18 to 29 were friends with someone who was also using the app, which allowed them to actually contact 85% of that demographic, which is huge for their campaign.
It's a big indication that there might be a big shift within the next 4 to 8 years where politicians will focus less on using the phones and more on using social media. And that shift, of course, will be gradual, and phones may always play an important role, but social media is certainly becoming more important as we move forward. So now we're going to take a quick shift and talk about some of the targeting topics that politicians can use and their messaging.
One of these first topics that politicians talk about, is gay marriage. And now, if you're looking at gay marriage, you're looking at finding individuals to message regarding gay marriage. You're going to find that a voter will likely support gay marriage if they live in a more urban area. They're younger, especially if they're a younger woman. They're single. They have a higher education level, and you can find those education levels based on neighborhood. And then also, you're going to find people that will support gay marriage are obviously probably going to be a Democrat or an independent. And so if you're a liberal running, you're going to want to pay attention to those variables. And if you're a conservative running, you're going to want to pay attention because In a lot of cases, if you're a conservative, you're going to want to eliminate those individuals from your list of targeting regarding that issue. But, generally, it's really hard to find these individuals based on gay marriage. But one way that you can really find individuals who support gay marriage is by going to a third party and renting a list. Some third parties have lists of individuals who have donated money towards AIDS organizations. This, probably wouldn't be as helpful in a smaller state, but in a larger state, it can be very helpful. And so that's something you want to consider if you're trying to find individuals who support gay marriage.
Gun control is another hot issue that politicians can target voters on. Now, although we all support gun control to a certain level, the data shows that the most politically active individuals out there are those who oppose gun regulations to a certain level. Those who typically support the NRA, and they typically have a few characteristics. And there are ways to find people who oppose gun control. There's a tight correlation between those who own a gun and who will who oppose gun control. One other interesting thing about targeting based on gun control is Republicans who are pro-gun have seen a lot more success in the past than Democrats who are for gun control. So it's much more wise if you're Republican to include gun control as part of your platform if you live in a highly Republican district than it is if you're a Democrat who supports a high level of gun control.
Yeah, and the reason why it's more successful for Republicans is because people who are against gun control, Republicans that are against gun control, are very passionate about it. So they're actually going to vote based on that issue. Whereas a lot of Democrats or people that are for gun control, that's not usually the biggest issue on their plate. It might be right now because of the recent shootings in Connecticut, but usually on election day, it doesn't drive people to vote a certain direction as strong as when you're looking at people who support gun control. Now let's talk about the issue that everyone likes to talk about at the dinner table on Thanksgiving. And that's abortion. Now, if you're gonna go and you're gonna target based on you're gonna message based on abortion, you're gonna find out that you're gonna actually want to target individuals who have very strong feelings regarding this issue, whether it's pro-choice or pro-life, because generally you can have a much higher impact if you go after those individuals with strong feelings when using this issue. It's hard to target someone on this issue generally, but you can kind of look at some of these variables when considering to target someone on this. Number one is younger educated women tend to be pro-choice, and number two, pro-life voters tend to be rural. They tend to live in rural areas. They tend to be older, and they tend to not be as economically well off. So consider those two variables when going out and messaging on this topic.
Now, regarding communicating with pro-choice voters, you really want to avoid targeting Republicans. By and large, Republicans are not pro-choice, they're pro-life. That's common political knowledge. You're going to have much more success if you go after independents and Democrats. Younger women tend to be more pro-choice relative to older women, and younger women who are single tend to be more pro-choice than younger women who are married. So typically, if you target to women under 35, you're going to have the best success, especially if you can identify those who are single. Men are less likely to cast a vote on the issue, and they're also less likely to be pro-choice. They're more likely to be pro-life.
Sterling, another thing too is neighborhoods with a high percentage of educated voters are usually a better target on this issue because educated voters tend to lean more towards pro-choice. Also, another thing is you can look at religion, actually. Catholics and Mormons, they're going to be generally more pro-life. And so if you're a Democrat on this campaign, you're going to want to avoid targeting them. Whereas Jewish voters, they tend to be more pro-choice. And one thing you can also do is you can go to third-party companies like Lifestyle Selector and other companies because they keep lists on people, Like, for instance, they have a Bible devotional readers subscription list. And so if you were a conservative and you wanted to campaign on the abortion issue, you might go to a third party, get a list of people who subscribe to a Bible devotional readers list, and target them on this issue. That could be very effective.
The environment's another issue we've seen politicians target voters using. However, theoretically, we all care for the environment. We all want it to be nice. However, voters have different approaches to solving environmental issues. So if you're targeting individuals who support the environment, you should target educated women. And also, those who live on the West Coast are typically more pro-environment than those who live in other parts of the U.S. And the only non-environment message you might consider is when there are cases of property right infringement.
All right, now let's talk about education. You're going to hear education all the time from the Republicans and the Democrats, but when it comes down to it, pretty much everyone supports education. But the only reason it's an important issue on the campaign trail is the fact that there's such a large portion of our budget that goes towards education, and this is especially true on local and state levels. But here's some things you need to consider. Younger voters are going to be more concerned about education. Better educated individuals feel stronger about the issue because they've had so much education. Women tend to feel stronger about the issue relative to men. And if you're going to do a mailer on this issue, you're going to want to target homes that have children in it.
All right, well, that's about it for this week's podcast. Next week, we're going to be talking about targeting from a poll. But before we go, Josh has some exciting news about our software, PoliticIt Candidate.
Well, PoliticIt Candidate is now out. We just got it out to our alpha users. It should be ready for beta phase here in about a month. And it basically provides real-time campaign analytics for politicians that help you perform in your campaign, and you can see results from the things that you're doing in your campaign. So we're really excited about it, and we're looking forward to getting some beta testers. So if you're interested, go ahead and send us an email, and we'll hook you up with a beta trial.
Thanks for listening.
PoliticIt Talk is brought to you by PoliticIt. PoliticIt provides powerful real-time campaign analytics for politicians. Contact PoliticIt if you would like to be a beta tester.